Good to get started. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm so happy to see familiar faces, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lovely program with some amazing folks. We have two amazing facilitators of Lead by Learning, some OLC folks in the virtual space, and also an incredible librarian from Contra Costa that we will hear from shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And for that, we're going to do just a quick overview about what we're going to do today. We're going to do a quick OLC overview. Lead by Learning is going to jump in as well. We're going to hear from our incredible librarian, John Evans. We're going to have some breakout room discussions. We're going to do a Q&A, have some closing reflections. And we ask that you stay at the end because if you do our feedback form, you might win some books today. So it's just really quickly some norms and outcomes. We really ask that you stay engaged and ask questions. This title of the program has inquiry in it, so truly to the heart of that, we really want you to have questions. We want you to be as engaged in this process and hope that you gain a deeper understanding and value and impact of participating in an inquiry community of practice. And really think about how you might take what you learned today back to your role, your organization, or really any practice of, community. All right, and welcome to the folks that are joining us now. Perfect timing, we're just getting started. So really quickly, and I echo what Jen said, this is not just a sit and listen. We really are hoping you are as engaged as possible. Really quickly too, just a quick overview of who we are as the OLC. Our main mission, right, is working together to ensure that every Oakland child learns and loves to read. We do that in a series of ways, various ways. I've seen some folks different parts of programs, and we first convened in 2018 as a project of the Rogers family. We launched independently in 2016 and really work on establishing Oakland as a model for improving literacy outcomes. I see a lot of amazing literacy leaders already in this space and people that we've worked with closely. So really quickly, our 4 strategic priorities for impact at the OLC, we believe that learning and liberation depend on literacy and that all children and families should have the support they need to learn to read. We view our work as pulling on 4 key levers to impact reading outcomes for children in Oakland, which is cultivating reading-rich environments, building capacity for effective literacy programming, coalition building for a connected, impactful ecosystem, and working in coalition to impact systems. In cultivating rich environments include curating and distributing culturally affirming books at schools and community events, including our Reading Everywhere action grants. We also have Books Kids Want to Read grant available to OUSD libraries to expand library collections. And we convene practitioners, policy members, stakeholders at the larger Oakland literacy ecosystem to learn, collaborate, and champion literacy. We most recently held our fall forum where I see some familiar faces who were able to join us there. So just a little bit about who we are. And this is a snapshot of our impact for this past school year. I can leave it a couple seconds here to read. It is also available online. I believe we can have someone drop that link in the chat if anyone is interested in reading it further. But this is just a quick glance at our year. I also want to give a quick shout out to my colleague Julia, who is the Reading Everywhere program manager and leads a lot of the book culturally affirming books programs. All right, I'm going to take us to the next slide. And this is a little bit about our school library partnerships program, and why we're here, right? To really center libraries. As of January 2022, the OLC School Library Program is home to the work founded and formerly led by Friends of Oakland Public Schools Libraries. The OLC recognizes the vital role that school libraries and librarians play in advancing literacy outcomes. OLC works to eliminate barriers to accessing well-curated, culturally inclusive, and high-interest library collections by providing grants to OUSD librarians to enhance library resources, raising awareness about library standards, staffing needs, access and collection, quality, and coordinating and supporting library volunteers to serve OUSD schools. The OLC Partnership Program, Library School Partnership Program strives to ensure equitable access to quality library services and resources that inspire a love of reading and learning in every student. So this is really why we wanted to feature a literacy journey with Lead by Learning and their school librarian community of practice. We believe really, really strongly in the importance of libraries and librarians in this work. And we all know part of being the OLC is part of working together, being part of a coalition and supporting one another. So we're really excited to have this program offering today. And with that, I am actually going to pass it over to Sarah and Charlie now from Lead by Learning. So we're going to have a quick transition where I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it over to them. Are y'all ready, Sarah and Charlie?
Yes,
All
thank you,
right.
Yodette.
Thank you all.
We are so excited to be here. We really love our partners at Oakland Literacy Coalition and excited to share with you about some of our literacy learning work. So super briefly, who is Lead by Learning? We are a center of professional learning at Mills College, which is now part of Northeastern University. And we exist to cultivate communities of adults who are passionate about equity and who engage in collaborative inquiry, who take action together to reach their goals for themselves and their students. And similar to OLC, we believe that learning is the key to liberation and to thriving both for individuals and for the systems that they exist in. And when it comes to those systems, whether it's a school system or a nonprofit organization, we see that system as comprised of both roots and shoots. And the roots, as you can see in this image, are the collaborative energy that the adults put in to improvement. And then the shoots are everything we want to see happen for students, their experiences, their learning outcomes. And Lead by Learning exists to nourish that root system. So currently we work with over 500 educators and they impact the root system health at over 600 schools. We also work with district leadership teams, we work with nonprofit organizations, we work with expanded learning departments and VAPA folks, and of course our wonderful librarian community of practice. And then cumulatively, all of those people improve the learning outcomes for over 440,000 students. So we are super excited and proud of our work with our partners, both here in the Bay Area and beyond. What we're here to talk to you about today is the way that we support those folks to develop their root system health. And that is to take them on an inquiry journey. And we hope that you leave today with a sense of what this can look like, whether you're a solo practitioner just wanting to engage in some inquiry about your own practice, or maybe you lead others and you're interested in engaging a team in an inquiry journey along with you. This can work both ways. So I'm kind of going to talk through what it looks like. And then we'll hear from John, who's going to tell us his inquiry story, and then you'll have a chance to reflect on your own context and talk with some colleagues in the room today about what it might look like to start this kind of journey in your own setting. So, an inquiry journey starts with identifying some area of your own practice or some area of your own system that you can see needs improvement. There's something about it that's a pain point. Something is not yet serving all students equitably or giving all students access to the opportunities that they need to learn and thrive. And once you identify that area, you start by thinking about what is currently true. What is happening now? What are learners experiencing? Which learners? When? that deep understanding of what is really happening now, that truth is sort of your anchor in all of this moving forward. After that, you tap into your hope. What is your vision? What do you want to see happening? Why does that matter? And then to realize that hope, the next step is to get curious. It's all about curiosity. You start to think about, what do I need to understand better? What's not yet clear to me? What is some data that I can look at to start to get more clear? And when we say data, that could be high level macro trends, numbers, charts, graphs, which is great. It can also be super fine grained, on the ground, minute to minute data coming out, information coming out of learners' experiences, and everything in between. And then from studying that data, from increasing your understanding, that's when you can start to think about, how do you want to change? How do you want to adapt? How do you want to shift your practice, your leadership, so that the students, so that your learners start to move closer toward your hope? And then, of course, it goes all over again. You go back to where you started and you think again, okay, now that I've made those changes, now what is true? You can go through that cycle as many times as you need. Now, it sounds linear and clear when I lay it out like I just did, but in reality, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, the inquiry process is messy. It looks like that kind of tangled knot that you see there on the left, right? There's twists and turns. Unexpected things come up. You find a new question that you didn't know you had before. Sometimes you experience setbacks, and it can feel, when you're in it, like a hot mess. And I don't know if John will give us his hot mess story at all. We'll see. But if you come back to your truth, if you come back to your hope, your curiosity, your change, you continue to go through those cycles, you'll notice that you do start to see progress over time. And you'll pause and look back and realize that you're learning and your students learning, or if it's adults that you're supporting, there was a meaningful path there, even if it wasn't the one that you were expecting when you started out. And the last thing I want to say before we hear from John is that a wonderful thing about this inquiry journey is that it develops an adaptive mindset in practitioners. So, the traditional paradigm of educator learning is sometimes what we call that sit and get training, right? You go to a training, you hear from an expert, you study the curriculum guide, you learn a set of best practices. The expertise is outside in that situation, it's outside of the educator themselves. And Helen Timperley and her colleagues who study school change and systems improvement work, they call the kind of expertise that comes from that kind of learning routine expertise. It's when you hear folks seeking examples, seeking strategies, seeking solutions, learning best practices, telling each other, oh, you should try this. Or in my setting, I do this, it works really well. Or someone asking, can you just show me, can you just tell me how to do this thing? And the kind of mindset that that cultivates is one of compliance often, and one of deferring to authority. And it's not that routine expertise is bad. We actually all need a huge amount of routine expertise just to function, especially when we're in the early years of learning our craft, right? You need to know just basic how to do things. So we need that. But we also need what Helen Timperley calls adaptive expertise, because the students in front of us are constantly changing. Their environments are constantly changing. The mandates coming from districts and from systems are constantly changing, right? There's no one set of best practices. There's no one single approach that will ever serve all of our students well. And so when we think about equity, when we think about really meeting the needs of the people in front of us, we have to be able to adapt. We have to be able to shift and make changes in a moment to moment basis often. And so that's where adaptive expertise comes in. And that's what engaging in an inquiry cycle really develops in practitioners. And so in contrast to routine expertise, when it comes to adaptive expertise, you'll see people wondering, you'll see them exploring uncertainties, you'll see them digging in to data in order to name their own next steps. Because when it comes to adaptive expertise, that expertise actually lies within the practitioner, within the community of educators. They are coming up with that expertise themselves. And so the mindset that develops is the inquiry mindset, and also one of agency, that we can figure out what our students need. We can figure out how to meet their needs. We don't have to look outside of ourselves for the answers. And then I think I'm going to turn it over now, yeah, to Charlie, who's going to introduce John.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Charlie. I'm so pleased to introduce John Henry Evans to all of you. John is a librarian at Helms Middle School in San Pablo in the West Contra Costa Unified School District. And John has been a participant last year and this year in a librarian community of practice, which brings together librarians from across the Alameda County region to engage in inquiry projects and share best practices together. And we chose him to share about his inquiry because it really showcases the intersection of librarianship and literacy instruction, how interfacing with teachers and students can really bring about the possibilities of transforming a reading culture at a school. And so that's what John's inquiry is doing this year. And so without further ado, John's going to talk through a piece of that inquiry work that he is currently doing. So with that, John, you can take it away.
Thank you, Charlie. Before we start, I want to give sincere thanks to Lead by Learning for leading this library PLC. As Charlie mentioned, this is my second year of doing it. I think that the inquiry process that Sarah went over with y'all, I really believe in it. But for me, doing it in a community of practice is really where the secret sauce comes in, because it's great that you can kind of talk things out with yourself and think about things on your own, but having somebody to bounce ideas off of, to work through problems. Oh, sorry, life is lifing right now. I'm gonna power through it and hope that announcement isn't too much. But having somebody to bounce ideas. Oh, you can't hear it. Okay, great. Having somebody to bounce ideas off of, having people to rely on when things go wrong, having people to support you and offer resources is really the secret sauce. And so I'm just really, really thankful. And that's actually where the inquiry process started for me. As Charlie mentioned, this is my second year of doing this library PLC. And last year, I was exploring something totally different. But one of the librarians in the PLC was exploring her school's SSR program, Silent Sustained Reading, in case you don't know what that means. And that got me really thinking about my own school's SSR program, which we call Reading Zone. It was introduced about 10 years ago when I first started. And when it started, it was there was a lot of enthusiasm and effort and energy around it. People were bouncing ideas around about how to make it more effective. There were contests, there were reading zone walkthroughs eventually, but three things really got in the way. Number one, the novelty wore off, as it inevitably does. Number two, we have a lot of staff turnover in this district. And so today, the people who originally created Reading Zone are no longer with this school. And three, this little thing called COVID. We came back from the pandemic. We said, time to start doing Reading Zone again now that we're in person. And nobody really remembered any of the efforts that had been going on before we left. But this other librarian was she did really two things for me. She talked about how she was in charge of her school's SSR program. And she mentioned this book, the SSR handbook. And I decided to get curious about this. I read the book, I thought about her work, and it gave me hope for what could happen with our school's SSR program. I really started thinking about what do I want Reading Zone to look like at our school? And I realized I want it to be this thing where it feels essential. It's not something where if teachers are running short on time, they go, oh, we don't have time for Reading Zone today. Sorry, we're going to have to skip it. That they feel like we have to do Reading Zone. I'm going to have to cut something else out. And I knew we weren't there. And this ideally would have been the step where I established goals for the inquiry, but like Sarah said, it's messy. We're still kind of determining what our SMART goals are. But the curiosity is really what kind of led me into the inquiry. And like Sarah also mentioned, there's sort of high level curiosity and on the ground data curiosity. We didn't really have any data, but we could look at best practices. This is my full stack of books that I show everybody that I do this inquiry work. I've been doing a lot of like, okay, what does a successful SSR program look like? What practices do we want to be implementing? And so I did all of this reading to figure out what steps we even needed to take as a school and what my efforts should be focused on. But then, of course, the next step was once we bring those best practices to the schools, what data do we have on whether or not it's actually working? And so I would call that sort of progress monitoring. And what I did was I looked at the SSR handbook's 8 factors for readings for SSR success, and I kind of formulated them into this reading zone rubric that I could take into teachers' classrooms, evaluate, and figure out, okay, we know what the factors are they happening? So far, the changes that have been made. Since I took over as school librarian, I've always been asked to give trainings on Reading Zone. But this year, I really thought, I want to make this training meaningful. I want to actually help Reading Zone to improve. And so I gave a training that incorporated some of those best practices I'd learned. Essentially, I was telling teachers, okay, this is what makes Reading Zones work. Now I want to see it in your classrooms. And so I started doing observations and looking at data. And this is kind of where I'm at right now in my inquiry process. What I'm seeing is a lot of the factors are in place, but the ones that I'd like to work on are teachers helping students to select books, students engaging in follow-up activities after Reading Zone is over, and teachers checking in with students, because those are the areas that I've seen the least of. And so, like Sarah said, it's a repeat process. So I gave the training, I got the observation data. Now I need to go back and try and do another training to improve those areas. And so those 3 things that I mentioned, book selection, follow-up activities, check-ins, are what I want to talk to teachers about. And there's one more change that I have to mention, which is actually getting student feedback. Because a lot of this is me going into classrooms and seeing, are the factors in place? But obviously an important piece also is, how do the students feel about the work that we're doing? And so I was introduced to focal student interviews last year through Lead by Learning, and it proved to be a really enriching experience. So I haven't really started that this year, but I do have an interview that I conducted the other day. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you guys. Not all of it, but there's like 3 key pieces that I think will hopefully stand out. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this, and hopefully you guys can hear. That's not it. Let me try again. So, do you do Reading Zone every day, like in all of your classes? Not on all of your classes, every day?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
They do.
Okay. And is it something you look forward to? Like if you know that it's going to be Reading Zone in a class that day, you feel like, oh, I'm excited to go to that class?
Yeah.
You do? Great. It's not a book that I have in the library, although I'll look into getting it. So how did you find out about it?
It's pretty popular, so I just found it online.
Oh, you found it online? Okay, how did you get it?
Well, I heard about it online. I just found it at Walmart.
Found it at Walmart. Awesome. And are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about reading just in general. Would you call yourself a reader?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
You would. And why is that?
Well, I do own some books at home. I read.
What kind of books do you have at home?
A bit of chapter books and mostly manga, comics like that.
So what I took away from those points in the interview were, number one, he looks forward to reading zone. That is great. Need more data. I need to see if other students feel the same way. Number two, when I asked about how he found his book, his answer was online. I would love it if my teacher recommended it to me or my friend recommended it to me. We're part of that process. And number three, he does see himself as a reader, but it's because he has books at home, not because of anything he's doing in school. And so this sort of on the ground data, I can play it for you and tell you what the students are saying about reading zone is really, really, really going to be helpful in my continued work with teachers to actually show them what changes I think need to be made and why I think they need to be made. So it's not just me telling teachers things without really any evidence to back it up. So I'm looking forward to more focal student interviews. I'm looking forward to this mid-year training, and then I'm looking to going back and doing it again, doing more observations and seeing what changes we have. And that is my inquiry process so far. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Charlie.
Thank you, John. That was so amazing to hear. And thank you so much for bringing student voice into our space today. What really struck me about your story is just how you brought us as listeners into your learning process step by step. So, showing us how you let your curiosity and the things that you learned lead you, it just really shows like how you're following your nose in this process. And I think it exemplifies the agency that comes with developing adaptive expertise. So thank you, John. Now all of you are going to have a chance to talk about what you heard John say and what his story brings up for you. And so you're going to go into triads, and there are two questions that we really want you to hone in on. There's the content of John's story that was so rich and interesting. So we want you to talk about what struck you about John's story. And then there's also the how piece of his story, how he approached his learning, and what he noticed about his context, and what that shows about how inquiry works. And so I want you to discuss those two pieces, both what you noticed and how John modeled inquiry, mindset, and adaptive expertise. So you'll have about 7 minutes to chat with your group. And we also are going to ask you to choose someone to take notes in the note catcher that Jen will drop in the chat. But also start by introducing yourselves. And then you can talk about the what and the how of John's story.
So thanks, everyone. I'm going to open up the breakout groups now, and co-hosts, I have you in a group as well. And as Charlie just said, we have 7 minutes, and I put the link in the chat. So go process. Here we go.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope that was interesting to just get to mull over a little bit of what John shared, maybe got your wheels turning about adaptive expertise and what that could mean for you in your context. What we're going to do now is give you a chance to just apply this model in a low-key, light touch way to your own role in your own setting. We hope that you leave today feeling inspired to apply this way of thinking to your own context. And you may end up pursuing some kind of long inquiry over time, the way John is, or you may do something that's much smaller in scale, could even be a day-long inquiry. Inquiries can take all kinds of shapes and forms, but we want to leave you today with an inkling of what that might look like for you in your own setting. And so at Lead by Learning, we always give people time to think alone and together. And so we're going to do a little mini version of that right now. So you're going to want to grab either a notebook, piece of scratch paper. You could pull up a doc. You could dictate into your phone, however you like to capture your own thinking. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to get organized right now before I take you through a little think alone activity. All right. After this think alone, you're going to go back into your small group that you were just in, and you'll have a chance to share some of this thinking with those colleagues in that group. So here we are. I want you to start by calling to mind some piece of your work, whatever that might be, your practice, your system, where you are feeling like there's a need for improvement. You're feeling in that part of your work that your vision is not yet being realized. Not every student is yet experiencing what you want them to experience. There's some pain for you there. And inside of that area, if you could make a couple of notes to yourself, what is happening now? What's the truth? What's your current reality? You might think about one student only. You could think about multiple learners. But take a moment to get anchored in your truth. Jot down a few notes to yourself. Next, I want you to jot down, what is your hope? What do you want to see happening? Why is that important? How does that align with your vision? And finally, start to tap into your curiosity here. What are you curious to understand better? Is there some adult experience in your system that you'd like to explore the way John did, starting by talking and noticing what's happening with the teachers in his school? Is there some student or young person experience that you're interested in understanding better? What are you curious? And then what data sources might you look at? Again, keeping in mind that data can mean all kinds of things. Data is any information you have about adults or students' experiences. Take a moment to jot that down. Now, I'm not going to ask you to write down your thoughts about change yet, because of course, how you adapt, how you shift rests on the exploration that you're getting ready to do, exploring your curiosity. So we won't go into that right now. Instead, we're going to get ready to go back into our small groups and share your truth, your hope, and your curiosity out loud. I love how John pointed out that thinking by yourself is obviously super useful, but it's the real change that happens when we share our thinking with colleagues who can respond. They can echo back to us. They can ask us questions. They can support us in the messiness that is the inquiry journey. And so you're going to get a little taste of that right now in your small group. We're suggesting that each person in your group gets an 8-minute turn. And inside of that 8 minutes, when it's your turn, you'll open with about 3 minutes or so of sharing what you were just jotting down to yourself about your truth, your hope, and your curiosity. And then you'll have about 4 minutes to engage in some discussion with the other people in your group where you'll get to practice developing your adaptive expertise. So you could try out some of the sentence stems that you see in the adaptive expertise box on this slide, in that sounds like box. And then save 1 minute. This is really important. In that 8-minute turn, save 1 minute at the end to go back to the person who started and ask them, what are they thinking now? So much about engaging in inquiry and developing your agency is naming your own next step. Where do you want to go from here? What are my new questions? What do I want to explore next? So really make sure you get back in each of the rounds to that 1 minute wrap up, what I'm thinking now. You'll do this 3 times, and then you'll hopefully feel fueled to continue this thinking process and this inquiry journey back in your own setting. When we get back, we'll have a few wrap-up activities, including a raffle, and we'll have a chance for you to ask questions if you have them. All right, Jen, I think we're ready for breakouts.
Great.
Hooray, so happy you can make it. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are going to start kind of bringing everyone back, and we have some time for some questions, but I also want to welcome any reflections that you want to share as well, or even if you want to share how you might take what you learned this morning and apply it to your day-to-day. So yeah, we have a couple of, before we officially close up, just some time for questions and reflections, if anyone wants to share.
While folks are thinking, I'm also going to drop a resource in the chat that John mentioned, the focal student interview. And Lead by Learning has a tool, sort of a 2-page guide on that practice, in case folks are interested.
Yeah, I also want to quickly share too, as we were going through this process, I was reminded of one of my favorite projects that I did prior to the OLC. And one of my most amazing thought partners was a teacher librarian at the mission. We used to co-teach a class, and she was just so dedicated. She was a school librarian, but she also taught 2 classes, and she was just so committed to literacy and to her students. And as I'm, participating in this session, it just reminded me of one, I need to text her and just be like, you are amazing and you held so much. And I just remember just how easily it was. It would be lunchtime, there would be a class going on, there would be kids asking her for books, but then she would also be hosting a lunch, supervising lunch in the library, and then we would have meetings during that time to prep for class. And I just want to just quickly share too, just I see how much librarians hold and how central they are to the heart of the school and school community, and how much those students in particular saw the library as a safe space. So I just really wanted to share that reflection that I was having as we were going through that. And yeah, just a reminder to one of my favorite teacher partners that I had in my previous role at another organization. So that was a really sweet moment that I had, just reflecting on that. But yeah, I want to welcome to any final thoughts, reflections before we officially close. All right, and it's not awkward silence. I used to teach during the pandemic with students on Zoom. So I'm really good at I would always joke, I'm really good at being in awkward silence. I will wait, but I also want to respect our time, so I won't keep us here. So I'm going to actually pull up our slides and just kind of go through our last announcements and things that I said I would talk about. So first of all, I also want to just give another shout out to Lead by Learning for being here and for bringing John and connecting us all. I deeply admire the work that you do, and I'm so happy to be in community with y'all. So just a quick shout out. This are all their handles and their emails. And then we also have a moment too where we can share a way that you can all stay connected. But anything to add before I continue, Charlie or Sarah? All right, thank you. And then some quick announcements for the OLC. If you haven't already, please register, purchase tickets to the Literacy and Justice for All. Lead by Learning also is going to be facilitating a session at the symposium next March. I am the program lead for, Literacy and Justice for All. So any questions you have, or you want to talk about how you can get tickets, you can reach me, you can email me. It is pretty easy to find on our website, I will say. This Saturday, some of us are going to be tabling at the Social Justice Children's Book Fair. And then I also want to highlight to visit just the Oakland Reads website. It's a great resource for parents, just to see like where your child, and just like benchmarks of where your child should be in regards to reading, and just a really great resource that we have. And I see, Carla, you have a question. Do you have?
Yeah, so it's not today, it's Saturday the 7th, is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's my
sorry.
mistake, and that's a great catch. It's Saturday, December 7th at Emerson Elementary in Oakland. And I put the link in the chat.
Sorry about that little typo there. Thank you for catching that. And then finally, so there's two things. We really, really love your feedback. We are big on feedback. We hope that you can take some time to fill out this form. And if you fill it out and you give us your email, you'll be entered in a raffle to win these two books. One of them being by Dr. Sonia Cherry Paul, who happens to be one of our keynote speakers for the Literacy and Justice for All Symposium. And Lead by Learning has also graciously added this book, Small Shifts, Cultivating a Practice of Student-Centered Teaching by Kim Austin Peach. So again, complete your your feedback form, and you'll be entered to win these two amazing books. But those were my main wrap-ups. I can give I can stop sharing too, some final reflections or any final questions. Did we also drop the link to the, awesome, thank you. I see your nods. All right, well, I'm gonna stop sharing. I want to see faces one more time. It is so lovely to have spent my morning with you all. And yes, please make sure that when you are filling out this form, you choose Libraries at the Center. But with that, we are 5 minutes early, and I am a lover of giving people time back at the end of a meeting. But yes, thank you all so much for staying engaged, staying to the end. We really, really appreciate you all. Really big shout out again to John and Sarah and Charlie for their facilitation expertise. And thank you all so much. We will end it here. And if you have any questions, feel free to say them. Thank you all.